this is the great boon of diversity, that first of all, you can learn new ideas, hear new ideas, which may be true and which as a result make you change your own behaviour as a society, or they may be true in part and thus may make you adapt some of your behaviour. And then secondly, they may be things which you still consider to be wrong, but which strengthen your society by strengthening your arguments about why those things are wrong. The reason why the issue of diversity threatening open societies comes up so often now is a matter of scale, is a matter of this society, for instance, not being able to or not feeling able to impose its own norms on people who come into the country. And that's why the issue of the threats to our societies have become so clear in the last 60 years or so since mass immigration began in Britain in the post-war period.
We can't absolutely have a closed-door policy. It makes absolutely no sense in this day and age. And I'm not just talking about skilled workers. There's definitely an appetite for and a need for unskilled workers as well. Just look at our demographics. We are becoming an increasingly elderly population. Our women are going back to work, and they're having fewer children. So who's going to look after our elderly? Who's going to look after our kids? Well, you know, it's certainly not going to be the British. And go to any kind of outlet, you know, who's picking our fruit, who's cleaning our offices, our hotels, our homes, who's cooking and serving our food in restaurants, who's delivering our pizza takeaways, that essential pizza takeaways. Again, it's not the British.
We've got examples, and they're very systematic examples in this country, of settled disadvantage. There are communities who are not going anywhere fast. We can labour the point that they happen to be Pakistani and Caribbeans, but actually you should also point out that there are quite a lot of white working class communities who are also best described as settled disadvantage. In other words, they've become inward-looking, they've got poor economics, the human capital story is appalling, and not surprisingly, there's been a growth of grievance politics. They want to blame everyone. They want to blame immigrants for raising house prices and lowering house prices. They want to blame immigrants for marrying their own and marrying their women. I mean, this goes on endlessly. This is the kind of narrative of grievance politics.
Are the solutions that we should be pursuing explicit or implicit? Douglas put it another way, institutional, to which the converse would be relational. And I suppose what some people would say is don't worry too much about things like, you know, what you do with political institutions and so on. Can you find ways of making different groups relate to each other in better ways?
If people don't want to engage in that reciprocal relationship that I described, if people don't want to reply in kind to the advantages they have, then there will be a problem for that. And I mean, I think the great example of that, the obvious example that comes up, is about not failing to speak the language. There will be a downside to that, as we see there already is with people. And I think we have to accept that if people don't take a part in the state fully, they will not fully enjoy the state. And that's simply how it will be.
Old-style muddling through, according to me, is not going to be enough, but it's not a bad start, okay? You work off that. You need some crystallisation, making things explicit where it's possible to do so, but you pay close regard to the impacts of that, so you don't get unintended consequences, the classic kind of boomerang effect, you know, hits you on the back of the head. And then you prioritise, you work out those areas where it actually makes a difference, rather than those things that people sort of beat their breasts about and say that it does make a difference, but apparently doesn't. So I would start with the single biggest lever or engine of integration, which is economics. It's the job market.
You have to have common frames of reference. That's the most straightforward thing. There has to be a history you know about and can share. When Trevor mentions Queen Elizabeth, you don't think, which one, whereabouts, which century we're talking about. And a common literature, art, and all of these sorts of things, as well as a common set of ideas. And if you know those things, then, as I say, you can riff on them in all sorts of ways, but if you don't, it's just noise.